I found out my fiancé had been sleeping with my maid of honor on the morning of my wedding, when the best man accidentally sent me a text that was meant for someone else. The setup. My name is Mara. I was 29 years old, a graphic designer from Columbus, Ohio, and I was 3 hours away from becoming Mrs. Mara Calloway. I had spent 14 months planning a wedding that I genuinely believed was the first page of the best chapter of my life. The centerpieces were peonies and baby's breath. My dress had a cathedral train. The venue was a restored barn outside the city with string lights hanging from every beam, and when I had first seen it, I had cried, not from stress, but from joy. Real, uncomplicated joy. I want you to remember that feeling. I want you to remember what I felt standing in that barn in June, imagining my future. Because what happened next tried very, very hard to take it away from me forever. His name was Daniel. We had been together for 4 years. He was charming in the way that certain men are, effortlessly, almost accidentally. He laughed loudly and tipped well at restaurants and remembered people's names the first time he heard them. My mother adored him. My grandmother called him the one after meeting him at Thanksgiving. And I had loved him with the kind of blind, generous trust that you only give when you believe someone is genuinely good. My maid of honor was Priya. We had been best friends since the second semester of our freshman year of college, when she had knocked on my dorm room door to borrow a phone charger and stayed for 4 hours talking about everything and nothing. We were the kind of friends who texted each other random thoughts at 2 a.m. We knew each other's secrets. I was hers. She was mine. Or so I believed.
2.
The life we built. For 4 years, I thought we were all living parallel, intertwined, happy lives. Daniel and I shared an apartment on the north side of Columbus. Priya lived 20 minutes away. The three of us had dinner together at least twice a month. She had been at every major moment of our relationship. The trip to Barcelona where Daniel had told me he loved me for the first time, my promotion celebration, the birthday where he had surprised me with tickets to see my favorite band. Priya had been in almost every memory I had of falling in love with this man. I thought that was beautiful. I thought it meant she was my person in the same way he was. I thought the three of us were a constellation. I think about how naive that sounds now. I think about it, and I still feel sick. The engagement happened on a Tuesday in October, which I loved. He hadn't done it on a holiday or a birthday, hadn't made it performative. We were just walking home from dinner, cutting through the park, and he stopped under a street lamp and got down on one knee like something out of a movie I hadn't known I was living. I said yes before he finished the sentence. Priya was the first person I called. She screamed so loudly, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She said, and I quote, "I have been waiting for this for 2 years. I cannot believe you made me keep that secret." I laughed until I cried. I thought that was one of the most wonderful moments of my life. She had helped him pick the ring. She had known he was going to propose. She had kept the secret. I thought that meant she loved me. She knew a lot of secrets, as it turned out.
3.
The morning everything died. It was 7:14 a.m. on June 15th. I was in the bridal suite of the venue, a warm, beautiful room with arched windows and a vintage vanity mirror framed in light bulbs. My hair was half done. My mother was sitting in the corner with a glass of champagne, already tearing up. 2 of my other bridesmaids were eating croissants and laughing about something. It was exactly the kind of morning I had imagined. Warm and golden and full of the low, buzzing electricity of a day that matters. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it in the mirror because my hair stylist had her hands deep in my curls and I couldn't actually reach for it. It was from Marcus, Daniel's best man. The message said, "You good? She doesn't know anything. Just act normal today, and it dies with this weekend. D says after the honeymoon, he's ending it for real this time." I stared at that message for a long moment. I watched my own face in the mirror. I watched the color leave it the way water drains from a tub, slowly at first, then all at once. My stylist said, "You okay, hon?" I said, "I need a minute." A minute. What I needed was a different life. What I needed was to rewind 4 years. What I needed was to not be standing in a wedding dress with 200 people downstairs and the knowledge that my entire life was a stage set. I asked my mom to take everyone for coffee. I said I needed 10 minutes alone to collect myself. Bridal nerves, I told her. She kissed my forehead and ushered everyone out. And then I sat down in front of that mirror in my cathedral train dress, and I read that message 7 times. She doesn't know anything. He's ending it for real this time. This time. This time. Not he's ending it. This time. As in there had been a first time he said he would end it. As in this had been going on long enough that there had been previous promises to stop. I put my phone face down on the vanity. I looked at myself in the mirror. The girl in the mirror had a half-finished updo and a cathedral train and mascara that was about to become a very bad idea. I said out loud, to no one, to myself, to the room. Okay. Think. 4. The immediate aftermath. I picked the phone back up and I called Priya. Because that's what you do when something terrible happens, isn't it? You call your best friend. Old habits. Muscle memory. For years of instinct. She picked up on the second ring, her voice bright and warm and completely, terrifyingly normal. Mara, oh my God, are you ready? Because I just saw the flowers, and I'm genuinely. I said, very quietly. Marcus sent me a text. By accident, I think. He was trying to send it to you. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, I heard the shape of every lie I had been told. I heard 4 years of birthday dinners and 2 a.m. texts and ring shopping trips and screaming on the phone about engagements reframed, reshuffled, rearranged into something grotesque. The silence confirmed everything the text had implied, and then it confirmed more. She said, Mara, I can explain. I hung up. I sat there for a moment. Then I called my cousin Danny, who was not in the wedding party, who was downstairs with 200 guests eating the appetizers I had spent 3 weeks choosing. I told her I needed her upstairs right now. I told her to come alone. I told her not to let anyone stop her. She was at the door in 4 minutes. She took one look at my face and said, What happened? Not a question. A recognition. I showed her the text. She read it. She looked up at me. How long? I said, I didn't know. She said, What do you need? I said, I need to know how long. The twist. Danny had something on her phone that I didn't expect. She had been the one who organized the bridal shower, which meant she had a group chat with all the bridesmaids from those months of planning. A group chat I was not in. And when she opened it, scrolling back through months of messages, she found a thread she had never thought to look at twice. Priya had been using the bridesmaid group chat, the one created to plan my shower, to coordinate with Daniel. Not frequently. Not brazenly. Just enough. A message from 8 months ago. He's coming to drop off the gift bags. Just make sure M doesn't stop by unannounced. A message from 5 months ago. Everything's fine. She has no idea. I just need everyone to act normal. Everyone. My bridesmaids, at least some of them, had known. Not all of them. Danny hadn't known. 2 others hadn't known. But 3 of the 6 women I had dressed in sage green and trusted with the most intimate parts of my wedding day had known that my best friend and my fiancé were having an affair, and they had sent me gift cards to my registry and helped me pick my veil and smiled at my rehearsal dinner and said nothing. That, more than anything, was the thing that made me feel like the floor had opened beneath me. Not the betrayal of 2 people. The silence of 5. 6. The discovery. I have never felt more alone in a room full of people than I did in the 30 minutes that followed. Danny and I sat in that bridal suite and went through everything she could access, carefully, deliberately, not because I needed more pain, but because I needed facts. I needed the full shape of what I was walking away from. It had started about 14 months ago, 2 months after the engagement. The timeline of that landed in my chest like something physical. He had gotten down on one knee, promised me forever, put a ring on my finger, and 2 months later had started sleeping with my best friend. The person who had screamed on the phone when I called her. The person who had helped pick the ring. From what we could piece together from the messages, Priya had ended it twice. Or tried to. And both times Daniel had pulled her back. There was a message from her 7 months ago that said, This was supposed to be one time. You know that. I can't keep doing this to her. And below it, his response, which Danny read to me quietly. You're the one I want. I just need to find the right moment to tell her. He was never going to tell me.
I know that now.
I think I knew it then, too. Reading those words, that finding the right moment had been a thing he would say indefinitely, like a carrot on a string, keeping Priya close while keeping me in the dark. He needed both of us. He needed me for the life he'd built, the stability, the apartment, the future. And he needed her for something else. Something he was unwilling to name, honestly, even to himself. The cruelest part? He had written her a message just 3 days before the wedding that said, "After this I promise, I'm committed." She deserves that.
She deserves that. As though I was a charity case.
As though fidelity was something he was generously deciding to grant me, like a pardon. 7. The confrontation. I had Danny go downstairs and get Daniel. I told her to tell him I needed him upstairs alone, that I was having a moment. I knew he'd come quickly. He was always good in a crisis. Always the person who showed up and soothed things. I used to love that about him. Standing in that room in my dress, I hated it. He came through the door smiling. He was in his suit, looking exactly the way I had always imagined he would look on our wedding day, handsome and certain and completely, terrifyingly comfortable. He said, "Hey, you okay? You look incredible by the..." I held up my phone. He saw the message from Marcus on the screen. I watched the smile die. The silence between us was different from the silence with Priya. Priya's silence had been guilty. Daniel's was calculating. I could see him behind his eyes, running through options, choosing a strategy. He went with denial first, which told me everything I needed to know about who he actually was. "Mara, that's not what it..." "Don't." I said it softly. Not because I wasn't furious. I was. But I had decided in those 30 minutes upstairs that I would not shatter. I would not give him tears. Not yet. Not there. Don't explain it. Don't context it. Just tell me the truth, one time, out loud. Was it Priya? He closed his eyes. He looked at the floor. He said, very quietly, "Yes." I nodded slowly. I said, "How long?" He said, "Mara." I said, "How long, Daniel?" He said, "About a year." I looked at him for a long moment. I looked at his face. The face I had kissed good morning for 4 years. The face I had looked at across dinner tables and hospital waiting rooms, and the tiny, beautiful, ordinary moments that make up a life. And I said, very calmly, the thing that had been forming in my chest for the past hour. "I want you to go downstairs and tell those 200 people that the wedding is canceled. I want you to stand in front of your parents and my parents and everyone who came here for us, and I want you to be the one who says it. And then I want you to never contact me again." He started to say something. I turned away from him. I walked to the window, and I looked out at the field and the morning and the tent where the caterers were finishing setting up, and I did not look back until I heard the door close behind him. Then I sat down. Then I let myself cry.
8.
The reversal. He did it. I'll give him that. I have no idea what he said, exactly. I was upstairs with Danny and my mother, who had come back to find me in pieces, and had simply sat down beside me and held my hand without asking a single question, which is one of the most extraordinary things anyone has ever done for me. But the guests were told. The wedding was stopped. And the fallout was swift and complete and utterly, entirely of his own making. Daniel worked in financial consulting. His firm had a culture of integrity. It was something they actually stressed in their internal materials, their LinkedIn posts, their company values. Half the office had been invited to the wedding, including 2 of his senior partners. When those partners watched him stand up and cancel his wedding on the morning it was supposed to happen, with no explanation beyond a quiet and visibly shattered admission that something had gone very wrong, the professional air around him shifted. Rumors started. The truth, as it always does, eventually surfaced. He was let go 4 months later. I don't know all the details. What I know is that several colleagues, upon learning what had happened, reported a pattern of dishonesty they had previously not felt comfortable naming. The affair was not the cause directly, but it was the thing that made people look closer. And when people look closer at someone who has been lying in one area of their life, they tend to find other places where the story doesn't hold together. Priya lost the job she had loved. She had worked at a nonprofit she was genuinely passionate about, where several of her colleagues had also attended the wedding and seen what happened.
She wasn't fired.
But the dynamic shifted, the trust broke, and she resigned 3 months later. I know because mutual friends told me, not because I was tracking her. I wasn't. I had stopped thinking about Priya almost immediately, not out of coldness, but out of a kind of grief that was too large to carry alongside anger. There wasn't room for both. I chose to put down the anger. I grieved the friendship like a death, because that's what it was. The 3 bridesmaids who had known, who had stayed silent for months, I simply stepped away from. No confrontation, no dramatic scene, just distance. One of them sent me a long message apologizing. I read it. I didn't respond. I had learned something important in that bridal suite. That silence, when it protects the wrong person, is its own kind of betrayal. And I wasn't required to absolve it on any timeline but my own.
9.
The life after. I want to tell you what happened in the months after the wedding that wasn't, because I think this is the part that actually matters. I moved out of the apartment Daniel and I had shared and into a small place near my studio. It was too quiet at first. I would wake up at 3 a.m. with the kind of specific grief that only comes from losing something you thought was permanent. Not just Daniel, not just Priya, but a version of my own life that I had been building toward for years. The version where the centerpieces were peonies and the string lights were beautiful, and the girl in the cathedral train got to keep being happy. But here's the thing about grief that no one tells you clearly enough. It has a bottom. It feels bottomless when you're in it, but it has a floor. You hit it. And then, slowly, unevenly, in ways that don't look anything like the movies, you start back up. I threw myself into work. I took on freelance projects I'd been too comfortable to pursue before, bigger clients, more ambitious creative briefs, things that scared me a little. I traveled alone for the first time in my adult life. A week in Portugal, just me and a carry-on, and no plan beyond wander. I ate dinners by myself at proper restaurants and I read books, and I sat with my own company until it stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like something I actually wanted. I found a therapist who was sharp and unsparing and who, in our 3rd session, said something I've carried with me every day since. You didn't miss red flags. You trusted people who worked hard to hide them. Those aren't the same thing. Danny became one of my closest people. My mother and I got closer than we had been since I was a teenager. I made new friends, real ones, people I met in honest circumstances, people who knew me as the person I was becoming rather than the person I had been in the story of Daniel and Priya. About 18 months after the wedding that didn't happen, I met someone.
His name is Eli.
He is quiet in the way that Daniel was never quiet, a stillness that comes from being genuinely comfortable with himself, not from having nothing to hide. He is not dramatic or electric or accidentally charming. He is kind, consistently, unperformatively, in the small details kind. He knew about what had happened. I told him early because I had learned to value honesty the way you value things only after you've lived without them, and he listened without flinching and said, "That sounds like it was devastating. I'm sorry that happened to you." Not a speech. Not a promise. Just acknowledgement. Just seeing it clearly. We got married last spring. No cathedral train. No barn venue. A small ceremony in a friend's backyard, 20 people, late afternoon light, and a dress I found at a vintage shop that fit like it was made for me. No centerpieces. Just wildflowers in mason jars. No string lights, just the actual sky going pink and gold as we said our vows. Danny was my only bridesmaid. My mother cried the same way she had in that beautiful bridal suite, but this time there was no shadow underneath it. There is a version of my story where June 15th ruined me, where I let what happened in that barn define every relationship I had after, every amount of trust one was willing to give, every risk I was willing to take on love. I understand why some people go that way. I don't judge it, but I chose differently. Not because I'm extraordinary, I'm not. Not because the pain wasn't real, it was. But because I decided, somewhere in those long quiet months of rebuilding, that the people who lied to me had already taken too much. They had taken the wedding, the friendship, the 4 years, the future I had imagined. I wasn't going to let them take the person I became afterward, too. They broke the version of me that needed everything to be perfect. What grew back was someone who knew the difference between the life that looked beautiful and the life that actually was.